together. Weave it together. Coming up short and giving up never. Weave it together. Come along, come along. Come along, come along. Mending it together. A world on fire can't last forever. We're gonna mend it together. A stitch in.
Welcome to Catalysing Change Week. This year's Catalysing Change Week is about solutions from the front lines by social innovators.
In 2022, Catalyst 2030 concentrated its efforts on bringing proximate leaders and frontline solutions to the forefront. Collaborations led by members from the Global South produced groundbreaking reports on climate and transforming education, with an emphasis on offering local solutions. We continued our mission to create an enabling environment for social entrepreneurs to flourish by initiating a letter to donors, signed by more than 1,200 social entrepreneurs and innovators. The Catalyst 2030 awards ceremony was spectacular, and the awards themselves welcomed by the private sector, governments, bio multilaterals and donors.
Catalyst 2030 as a movement is disruptive.
One of the best things I think that's come out of Catalyst 2030 so far is incredible collaboration across the ecosystem that just didn't exist before Catalyst came into being.
The thing I love most about Catalyst is that it's an open movement for social entrepreneurs around the world.
I'd encourage anyone who's looking to be more connected with their local communities around social development goals to come along to Catalysing Change Week.
Welcome to Catalysing Change Week.
Welcome everyone to this amazing session about impact investment and the SDGs 2030. I want to welcome our moderator, Gisela Sanchez, and the panelists. Welcome, Gisela. I want to introduce you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Paula, and welcome everyone to this session about I strongly believe, a very important topic, how impact investment can support and can accelerate the achievement of the SDG 2030 goals. And for this panel, we have a group of amazing professionals. With us, we have Leonor Gutierrez, Shannon Music, Fernando Alvarado, and Juan Pablo Mancilla. Three of them from Costa Rica and Juan Pablo from Guatemala. And to get started, I would love to hear from each of them about what they do. What are the initiatives related to the accomplishment of the SDG goals? And I would love to start with Fernando, if you can introduce yourself, and welcome, Fernando.
Thank you, Gisela, and hello, everyone. Yes, my name is Fernando Alvarado. I am Costa Rican, based in Costa Rica as well. I am the CEO of one of the two verticals of our group that is called Deeetken Impact. So I lead the two sustainable energy funds that combine capital from concessional capital providers, development finance institutions, and private sector investors as well. And so we invest in projects and companies on renewable energy and energy efficiency in Central America and the Caribbean, obviously with an impact investing approach, including gender inclusivity. In addition to the two specialized funds in sustainable energy, our group also manages three other funds under the other vertical that we call Deeetken Impact Alternative Finance. Is more open sector, but usually coming with, let's say, a flexible and tailored approach that promotes catalyzing the attraction of additional co-investment to implement projects and companies throughout Latin America and the Caribbean. We are signatories, for example, of the operating principles of impact management. We have presented our disclosure statements for the last 3 years, gone through an independent verification, and we have also been awarded in the last 4 years the Impact Assets 50 for our commitment, let's say, in this field of impact investing. So very happy to be here and looking forward to a great conversation.
Thank you so much, Fernando. Very happy to have you here. And we can continue with Leonor, if you can introduce yourself. And again, thank you for being with us.
Thank you. Well, my name is Leonor Gutierrez, and I'm the director of the Women in Agriculture Initiative for Root Capital. And for those of you who probably have never heard of Root Capital is an impact investor. And it was started 20 years ago with the mission of investing in the growth of agricultural enterprises globally. We have operations in Latin America, in Africa, and also in Asia. And the idea is that through impact investing, we can help and provide the means for a more prosperous and inclusive and resilient future of the rural communities that at the end of the day are the ones that are putting food on our tables. This is done through a credit plus capacity model, and we have helped around 10 million families around the world with this model. And I represent the Women in Agriculture Initiative. So 10 years ago, Root Capital made a commitment to close the gender gap in agriculture. The gender gap for agricultural investing is a few $1 trillion, so it's a big gap. And here today, something that I would like to share with all of you is that we just concluded an impact study. And it's, the evaluation of $1 billion of investments with data segregated by gender. So hopefully it will be interesting, and hopefully it will inspire people in the audience and in the future to invest to close this gender gap. Thank you.
Absolutely, Leonor. Very, very interesting, and we would love to know a little bit more about it. But before that, I would love Shannon to introduce herself and tell us a little bit about the organization that she's leading in this part of the world.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Gisela. It's really a pleasure to be here sharing this space with all of you. My name is Shannon Music. I am Director of Operations and Strategic Alliances at VIVA Idea. And also probably not well known for all of you, VIVA Idea is a nonprofit organization, a think action tank. We are dedicated to strengthening collective action towards sustainable development in the global South. We're based mainly in Costa Rica, which is where I am right now, but we also have presence in Panama, Bolivia, Mexico, Chile, and really we work throughout the Latin American region. We work with universities such as INCAE and EGADE at the Tec de Monterrey. These are both business schools, conducting our own action research. And therefore, we are a voice of the Global South, legitimized by the international scientific community. We work alongside organizations and companies, supporting them in managing their contributions to the fulfillment of the SDGs. And we focus on topics such as impact investing, social entrepreneurship, collective action, inclusive markets, among others. One of the things that we've done within the work of impact investing is promoting the creation of a Central American impact investment platform, which Juan Pablo will tell you a little bit about that in a moment. And then just to finish up, I'll mention that we're also part of Viva Trust, which is an ecosystem of sister organizations. We all share the same founder, Stefan Schmid-Heine, and it includes organizations such as Avina Foundation, Fundes, Marviva, Macisa, all organizations that are really contributing to the fulfillment of the SDGs. So happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shannon. And I have to share that I was lucky enough to be part of that amazing group and have the opportunity to be inspired by Stefan Schmid-Heine. And we have with us Juan Pablo Mancilla from Guatemala. Welcome, Juan Pablo. It would be lovely if you can tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you're doing.
Thanks, Gisela. First of all, hello, everyone. My name is Juan Pablo Mancilla. I'm the Executive Coordinator of the Plataforma de Inversión de Impacto Centroamericana. which is a group of private, public, and nonprofit organizations that seeks to consolidate and promote impact investment in Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, Costa Rica, Nicaragua, and Panama. As an ecosystem builder, we help to close key gaps and needs of the impact investment ecosystem in our region. Since 2019, we became the regional advisory board for Central America in the Global Steering Group for Impact Investment, or GSG. As you may know, this global and independent organization catalyzes impact investment worldwide. Currently has more than 40 members countries, and being part of the GSG help us to achieve our goals. We learn impact investment best practices, share experience, also increases our goal, our global and regional network, among other things. So once again, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm ready to talk with you about how we are supporting and helping the Central America system.
Thank you so much, Juan Pablo. And as you can see, we have an amazing group of panelists with us. So I encourage everyone to start thinking about questions that or comments that you may want to ask. And to get started, I would love to ask Fernando a few questions. We know that impact investment can support the acceleration of the transition to renewable energy sources. But how, Fernando, can we use impact investment to accelerate that transition to renewable energy sources here and around the world?
Certainly, yeah. Obviously, you know, it has become so important now that it's obvious that it's contributing strongly to accelerating the renewable energy transition around the world. I am going to perhaps sort of focus this from two perspectives. The first one is the supply of capital to actually, you know, support this transition. So from this point of view, the way we see it is that impact investors with capital looking for opportunities in the renewable energy sector can contribute by providing more flexible terms and financial structures that definitely contribute to the financial viability of these projects. So let's say the flexible approach that impact investing, where we are not just focusing on the financial returns, but also paying equal attention, if not more, to social and environmental, then benefits, let's say, the financial structures of the projects themselves. So that's one aspect. Then the other one is that by investors demanding more transparency and accountability from recipients of capital, that actually improves those projects' chances of closing their financial rounds. So from that point of view, it's certainly important. Like, you know, in our case, we adhere to the operating principles of impact management. So we have a systematic approach to this. And in doing so, we believe that then it adds credibility to the projects in which we invest. And then those projects could potentially attract more capital as well. And then impact investors are well positioned to blend concessional capital with other sources of, let's say, more commercial financing, especially from private sector investors. And in doing so, perhaps there would be more tolerance for risk that would enable, for example, technological innovation, tech startups, etc. That is going to contribute, obviously, to the renewable energy transition. One example is, you know, all the money that is going into battery storage, which is becoming a game changer that will accelerate the adoption of intermittent sources of renewable energy, such as solar power, that with the capacity now of storing energy will definitely have higher participation in this sector. And then from the point of view of the demand for capital, from the, let's say, perspective of project sponsors, business owners, etc., focusing on impact obviously turns their projects much more sustainable. And this means going beyond the ESG, which is essentially the diligence, the risk mitigation, but now going further into the intentionality of favoring, you know, social and environmental impacts plus the financial returns as well. That means that the project would have less chance of failing. So that obviously attracts as well more investors, because then the ecosystem would be more bulletproof. And lastly, we believe that adopting, an impact approach from the demand side, that means that you would be compelled to be more connected and more engaging with key local stakeholders, including communities. That in turn should attract and facilitate partnerships, collaborations, and in general increase deal flow and investment opportunities that would then obviously accelerate the renewable energy transition.
Super. Just a follow-up question, Fernando. How do you measure the impact in the energy sector? What is the best way to, and everybody's super interested about measuring impact, of course.
Yeah, I'm going to speak, from our point of view as a formal impact investor. That means that, we take a systematic and methodical approach to this. Given our adherence to the operating principles of impact management, we abide by the 9 principles that have to do with all our investment continuum, from how we actually look for investment opportunities, how we screen them, how we, when we are negotiating investment terms, set expectations, financial, social, and environmental, and then how we actually monitor the performance of those projects as we deploy capital and implement the businesses, and then how we constantly, again, measure the actuals versus the expectation, take corrective course, and ultimately report to our investors, perhaps at private level, let's say at the fund investor level, but at the same time, making public our accomplishments and commitments to impact investing, and obviously tied to direct and very specific contributions to the SDGs, which obviously are part of our investment strategy to begin with. So I would say that firstly, you need to be serious and systematic about it, be subject to public scrutiny and independent verification, which actually is part of the approach of the OPIM. And then, going further, we could talk about the specific impacts in terms of social and environmental, but perhaps you were more interested in asking about how we do it. Well, the answer is we adopt formal methods of doing that, and then perhaps later on during this conversation we can precise on what kind of impacts we are measuring, both social and environmental.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Fernando. I'm a true believer in making your commitments public, because the accountability part will be there, and it has a bigger opportunity to be successful. I would love to get to Leonor, and you're a leader in the region, and gender equality is critical, and it's one of the goals that I personally care a lot about, of course. So, Leonor, could you explain us how impact investment can help promote gender equality?
Yes, I'll try. No, I think that I feel very aligned with what Fernando is saying. Impact investment is all about the impact and all about how we can generate incremental impact and have as big as impact as possible. And when you think about it, if you have half of the population being excluded from those initiatives, and the business case getting stronger and stronger for more than a decade now, we have like so many research around how women are good for business, then it's just a right implication that by closing the gender gap, you're not only going to do something good by elevating the livelihoods of so many women around the world and so many families around the world, but also what is best for business. And that goes through, it's transversal to every industry, including agriculture, where the gender gap is huge. And I think that, as you were mentioning, it's very important to have clarity regarding of what will be your public commitments, but you don't necessarily need to be a gender investor, to invest with a gender lens. And I think that this is something that is important to promote and understand, because it doesn't mean that in order to work hard to close this gender gap, you need to be doing exclusively or you need to be a super expert in gender issues. What it is important is for you to take a look at your portfolio and make decisions regarding of what percentage of the portfolio you want to be women-led businesses, for example, gender-inclusive businesses. Find your own definitions for that and just start the hard work. That is going out there, find them and finance them. See, you're muted.
Oh, so sorry. I totally agree. There is an amazing opportunity. And what do you think are some of the biggest challenges facing impact investments in promoting gender equality? And how can we or they be addressed?
Well, I think that one of the biggest challenges, and we find often this as almost an excuse for not taking the first step and just go ahead and do it. And is that in some industries, businesses, gender inclusive businesses and businesses that are already
We're losing a little bit of Leonor. Can you hear us, Leo?
Am I back?
Yes, you are. Go ahead. No, not really, but
Yes,
don't worry.
Okay, sorry about that. No, what I was saying is that
go ahead. Maybe if you turn off your camera just for a few seconds, it will be maybe coming back sooner, or no, she's not with us anymore. It's okay because we can come back to Leonor and maybe we can go to Shannon and Juan Pablo. Actually, we have two questions for them. The first one is, how can impact investment help collaboration and cooperation between different stakeholders to achieve SDGs? And it's an amazing, because we can focus on objective 17, an amazing question for you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gisela. Thanks for the question. And yes, SDG 17 is all about partnerships for the goals. And it's about this understanding that the challenges, these grand challenges that we have today cannot be solved through individual efforts, individual organizations, and how they require this collaboration between different actors, understanding the systemic nature of these issues, et cetera. So I think it's a great question, and impact investing can play a crucial role in promoting this collaboration and this cooperation between different stakeholders to achieve the SDGs. And I have 4 ways in which I think it can help. The first one is by aligning incentives of different stakeholders towards this achievement. And I think Fernando mentioned this at the beginning. It's the idea that investors can use their capital not only to have financial returns, but through impact investing, also driving this positive social and environmental outcome at the same time. So by focusing on impact, they become an ally for local communities, for social entrepreneurs, for governments, and many other actors. And by making financing and investment available for impact, they also encourage and support actors that have financially sustainable solutions to social and environmental problems. So this alignment, I think, is one of the things that's important. Second is that they often foster partnerships themselves. So impact investors often bring together a range of stakeholders, including governments, NGOs, businesses, to collaborate on projects that have this social or environmental aim. An example of this, a very clear example, is how impact investors structure social impact bonds. And this is just one example, one instrument of many. But as you may know, social impact bonds are performance-based contracts between investors, service providers, and government entities typically. And these instruments allow investors to provide upfront funding to service providers, so nonprofits and social enterprises come into play here, and then deliver that they're going to be delivering these social services or these interventions. And then when these interventions are successful, if they achieve these predetermined outcomes, as Fernando was also mentioning, often as measured by independent impact verifiers, then the investors receive the financial return from the government entity. And so these social impact bonds bring together investors, service providers, government entities, independent verifiers, all of these actors together to collaborate on delivering and measuring social impact. Another important aspect, and we at VIVA Idea, we talk about this a lot, is how impact investors should and can engage a wide range of local stakeholders to understand their needs, their perspectives, and to involve them both in the design and the implementation of projects, as well as in the measurement of the impact or the evaluation of the impact and the success of the projects. The more impact investors understand about the context and the more they include these local actors as they engage in the projects, the more they build trust, a sense of ownership, and they increase the likelihood of success of the projects. And finally, I think another way that impact investing can help build trust between stakeholders and foster collaboration towards achieving these common goals is by promoting and using rigorous monitoring and evaluation processes to track this progress towards the SDGs. And you were just talking about this, Gisela, to ensure that the investments are having the intended impact. And having more transparency around impact is crucial to ensure that we're moving in the right direction. And really, impact investors are playing an important role here in kind of pushing that agenda. So I think in summary, it would be, impact investing, promoting this collaboration and this cooperation along the lines of the SDG 17, by aligning incentives, fostering partnerships, engaging a wide range of stakeholders, and then using the rigorous monitoring and evaluation processes to track the progress towards SDGs.
Absolutely, absolutely. We know that the first 16 objectives are so challenging. We know that even though all the governments around the world will have the best intentions, the best people, know-how, and the resources, it will be impossible. So we definitely need the collaboration with the civil society and of course, the private sector. And for that, actually, I would like to ask Juan Pablo, how can we involve more stakeholders in the impact investment ecosystem and in this region? And of course, if you have any ideas that we can share with the rest of the world.
Yeah, thanks, Gisela. Great question, because more actors, more impact, right? Well, first of all, it's important to know the main pillars of the impact investment ecosystem, which can be classified in 5: supply of capital, demand for capital, intermediation, market enablers, and government, which of course includes policy makers and regulation. Then it's key to start looking these actors and organizations that could help join or support the initiatives and start identifying synergies with them. For example, from our side, one thing that is helping us a lot is being part of the GSG through other national advisory boards in other countries, especially in Latin America. We were able to access to an important spaces and networks. As you may know, a lot of organizations operate and have interest in more than one region or country. So having this first contact through the National Advisory Board is very important for us and it's very helpful. Also, to facilitate this collaboration, we strongly suggest start mapping the actors and classify them. Depending on the necessities and interests your organization has. And I want to be very clear with this. This is not a single and one-time task. We are constantly listening to the needs and gaps of our ecosystem in order to add more or update stakeholders to accomplish the goals. So that's our suggestion from our experience.
Thank you so much, Juan Pablo. I love the explanation of the different parts of the ecosystem. And going back to Leonor, we were talking about big challenges facing impact investments in promoting gender equality. So please go ahead. We were really excited about what you were sharing with us.
Yes, thank you. And I'm so sorry that the internet connection dropped. That's always so bad. Well, thank you. No, I was just saying that sometimes part of the argument is that this gender inclusive or women-led businesses are hard to find. For us at Root Capital, most of our loans fall into the category of $500,000 or more. So when we want to invest in smaller businesses, and we find many women-led businesses in agriculture to be more high additionality or having highest additionality than the ones that we deal that are not, what we tend to do is to find the right partners so that we can reduce the risk of those investments and make sure that we're investing in the ones that need it the most. Something else that we do is just going after the pipeline, having a robust pipeline where you can really access these businesses, find them and make them visible for your lender officers is key. And that means, like investing in marketing studies and just making the effort and doing the work and the homework so that you can actually have this pipeline that would allow you to feed these genderless investments. Something else that happens sometimes is that an organization decides that wants to start looking into gender as one of the indicators of impact. However, internally, they haven't taken the steps towards gender inclusion. This means that it is important to have a pause and look inside and look into the internal operations of the organization and making, adjustments and also having hard conversations so that you can internally overcome any kind of gender bias that may be interfering with your goal to start investing with a gender lens. As you just mentioned, Gisela, I totally agree with you. Making a bold and public commitment is key, and it's a really good way of just making those obstacles, challenges to overcome and not letting them stop you, because you have already made a commitment and you need to comply and you need to prove to your peers and to your wider audience that you are into it and that you're going to just go for it. And something else that we also think it's important is just take the small wins. Like when you're planning for gender inclusion and you're starting this path, make sure that you find along the way little stops so that you can celebrate and so that you can just get back together as an organization and be very aware of how the steps that you're taking are moving you forward into that direction. So I think it's about having the right tools, finding the right pipeline, having the hard conversations internally so that you can make sure that your team and your lenders are all aligned into the same pathway, and at the same time making bold commitments and not being afraid to start this journey of gender investment.
Absolutely, I cannot agree more. I love the part about being internally consistent in terms of gender equality. And actually, I think for me, the biggest question sometimes is the salary gap. It's not only about getting women in the right leadership positions, but at the same time, making sure that these, of course, there is a gap, and normally it's closing and we have a goal, a concrete goal to get to zero. So I love that part. I think it's all about consistency before we go out and try to promote it and use impact investment for that. We do have questions. I was almost ready to say we're welcoming questions in the chat, and we do have a question for Shannon. So maybe we can get started with that. And I have a few questions in my mind too, but I would like to start with this one. Shannon, what are some examples of independent impact verification organizations that you were talking a little bit about?
That's great. Yes, so that I'll mention a little bit more about the independent verification organizations. I think they're very important. And it makes a lot of sense to have them be independent, because in many of these schemes, for example, the social impact bonds that we were discussing, you can't have the service providers be the ones measuring the impact. You don't want the financing ones be the ones measuring impact either. They have interests, and the government shouldn't be the one measuring either. So you want an external kind of validated party that everybody agrees to at the beginning when you're setting up the contract. I think it is very important to have that external organization that's going to act as an impact verifier, I guess. And I would love to hear what Fernando and Leonor have to say about that. The organization that we're working with in Costa Rica is ACRUX Partners, and they are kind of helping us structure and might act as a verifier themselves, or they might refer another party. But I know that there are others, and I think it probably will depend also on what is the subject that you're focused on, and there's probably specializations between these actors as well, depending on if you're doing energy, if you're doing gender, or other things like that. I will write down 8 crooks over here. But I know Fernando, Leonor, you have experience with this, I'm sure.
Paulo, if you want to jump in.
Yeah, well, regarding specifically gender, there are a few agencies that can definitely come and help. And I think that it's also important to be very rigorous, collecting your own indicators and data, and then periodically have evaluations done by an external party. So I will say that it's a mix of both. You need to know internally what is going on and having a really close look at your programs and processes. So as Fernando mentioned too, like tune up what's not going well, and then, you know, go back and keep on that kind of track of self-improvement, constant self-improvement. But for those kind of agencies, well, we have very strong connections with one that is called Value for Women, also one that is called ICRW, IFPRI, even ProMujer, that is a small business agency. They conduct evaluations as well. And there are others, even with local universities, sometimes contracts like such can be done. So I think that is a matter of just like reading a little bit and finding the right partner and the right match. But my recommendation will be, if you don't have necessarily the funding for that, is start taking indicators very seriously internally, and hopefully even find like a way, a software that you can make a dashboard, so that the dashboard can be part of your periodic meetings, and just get into, you know, the exercise of being constantly evaluating the indicators of impact that you're trying to achieve.
Totally, Leonor. It will be great if you can share within the chat the names. And Fernando and Juan Pablo, any ideas regarding verification organizations?
Certainly, yeah. And I wanted to mention that it is important to perhaps, you know, go with verification agencies that, you know, make sense with respect to the size of your portfolios, your operations, what your budget can allow, but such that that doesn't necessarily becomes a deterrent to not doing it. In our case, we have been verified by a professional company in Honduras that is called TECDEA. They are highly regarded. They are advisors to most of the development finance institutions from Europe, IDB, etc. They have been also helping the regional council of banking superintendencies to actually adopt standards for ESG and impact investing that would eventually make its way into the commercial banking systems in these countries. So this to say that there are definitely firms and I can write down their names soon here in the chat window. But, and for example, yesterday I was, because I am party of the Committee for Latin America of the Operation Principles for Impact Management of the OPIM, and there's a lot of participation of Brazilian impact fund managers, and obviously they were making reference to Brazilian verification agencies, some that are actually of recent establishment, led by professionals who saw the opportunity and decided to open their practice just a couple of years ago. So this is relatively recent. My message is, see what there is in your space. Obviously, if you want, references, reach out to impact investors. I also suggest that you contact the organization of OPIN, which is right now the GIN, the Global Impact Investment Network, and request that information. And then you can obviously obtain quotations from different entities and decide. But it's certainly very important to start developing that practice, as Leo was saying, of being open to public or independent verification, and then obviously public disclosure as well.
Absolutely. Any suggestions, Juan Pablo, that you may want to add? And actually, Shannon he wants to say something too, but maybe we can get started if Juan Pablo has anything to add, and then Shannon.
No, please go on, Shannon.
Sure. Are you sure, Juan Pablo? I can wait.
Ladies first.
Okay.
Oh yeah, I can wait too. Don't worry.
All right, thank you. I just wanted to add one more comment about that it makes sense for you to have many of these impact verifiers, because I think that it is important that whoever you use for this kind of work knows your context very well and has that, because impact, it's not the same everywhere, that each community needs specific things, and it's important to have a player there that is really understands the work that you're doing, understands the communities where you're working, what impact you are having. And so I think that it does require that local presence, that presence on the ground. And I think that's part of the reason that you find many players are able to provide these things. Of course, there are international standards, and there's different ways to I guess standardize some of these evaluations, but I think the local aspect is very important.
Absolutely, Shannon. Juan Pablo.
Well, in my case, I just want to add that, of course, the impact investment is contextual. So it's very important to start identifying great ways to start measuring your impact, because in our case, for example, we know a lot of different organizations and companies that is having a lot of social and environment effects, positive effects. But right now, they don't quantify the impact they are having in the communities or environment. So from other perspective, I strongly recommend that you can start looking for, if you are not measuring the impact you are having, start looking for other ways and process ways or tools to start measuring your impact. Right now, there are a lot of different ways. So that's only the thing I want to add.
Thank you, Juan Pablo. I'm going to use Maria Gabriela's comment that we need more enablers connecting funders and impact investors to women-led social ventures. And actually, as a social entrepreneur, we strongly believe this is critical. And normally, and with the banking hat, it's so difficult and so challenging, especially for women, because they are not the owners of the land. They're not the owners of the assets normally to build the leaders of a social venture, of a social endeavor. So any suggestions, any ideas that we can use to connect and enable a little bit more the social the movement, the impact investment movement going to the women-led social ventures. Leo?
Absolutely.
Yeah, maybe I can start. I was thinking that it's just very important to feel supported by a community. And I feel that there are plenty communities out there. Like this is something that is good news. This is not only one, depending on where you are. So locally in your own countries, there are even United Nations chapters that are communities. I'm thinking in Costa Rica, I don't know, BioFin and what PNUD is doing around climate and gender. So those are communities you can just try, find and belong. And then niche communities as well. They are like, I don't know, like communities of women in agriculture all around the world. And if you want to go more globally, where you can find a big pool of impact investors with the specific lens of gender and climate, you can go to an organization that is called 2X Global. 2X Global is a merge. They used to be the 2X Challenge and the Gender Smart Summit, and they both merged last year, and they became this bigger organization that is called 2X Global. And I just strongly recommend to look into them and hopefully help or find a way to be associated with them, because there you can find like a big pool of impact investors with the specific lens of gender.
Thank you so much, Leonor. I would love to open the floor to everyone. If anyone wants to interact or ask any specific questions. And actually, I do have one now. Mike asks Fernando, you mentioned social goals separate from financial goals. How often do your investment prioritize a combined focus on achieving both social and financial performance?
Yeah, it's a good question. We are in the funds that I manage specifically invest in sustainable infrastructure, generation projects using renewable energy resources. So from that point of view, our investments are or have a long-term horizon. These kind of projects obviously generate normally steady cash flows, but take time to repay the investment. Our big investments in infrastructure, construction of generation plants, whether they are solar, wind, hydroelectric power, etc. From that point of view, we come with a long-term perspective, in which case makes the sustainability of the investments absolutely crucial. That means paying equal attention to social, environmental, and financial aspects. A project may have a great potential of generating revenues, but if it is doing it while still, let's say, affecting the environment, that could eventually turn into social issues, that could eventually put communities against that project, and eventually lead to its interruption temporarily or permanently. So we pay equal attention, and part of our let's say, objectives or investment objectives, as well as investment decisions when we take those opportunities to our investment committees, I would say give equal importance to all those, the risk mitigation, but also the impacts. In the end, our investors are pursuing all of them, not just the financial. They don't just want their money back, they want the money back plus the social and environmental impacts. So from that point of view, I think that, yeah, it's equal attention. Obviously, in order to ensure that you are achieving the impacts, you have to have, again, a very rigorous and systematic approach to measuring those impacts, effecting corrective measures, and ultimately, learning from, what is happening, from the, positive and not so positive, make adjustments, and hopefully, then be able to return to your investors those impacts. I wanted to add something with respect to something that Leo mentioned before, which struck with me, because I think it's important that, funds don't necessarily need to be gender funds or investment mechanisms to take gender seriously. And I mentioned at the beginning in my introduction that in our group we have 5 impact investment funds. One of those funds started actually is a women empowerment fund that provides loans to women-led entities, and actually is a fund in which ProMujer, that was mentioned before, is also an investor. And as a, let's say, by virtue of that partnership, actually our organization with ProMujer developed a gender lens framework to assess investment opportunities. Well, we believe that that framework, and actually there's a toolkit, if there's interest in that toolkit for potential users of it, it's available for free. We sort of proved something that is already known, that inclusive organizations have better success rates. And so what we have been doing is applying that framework to our sustainable energy funds. The existing funds that already had portfolio investments, we applied the framework, the methodology to make gap analysis, fill gaps, and that now is common across all our different thematic funds. So we divide the gender, let's say, inclusivity in 5 main lenses, but in the end, they all contribute to the business case, leadership and governance, workplace equity, product services, and how the company markets itself, value chain and advocacy, including all other service providers, not just the company itself, and last but not least, something that has been already mentioned, which is community engagement, because obviously our projects don't operate in a vacuum. They are always interacting with the communities, and by being a good neighbor, we see that the sustainability is greatly improved in these investments.
That sounds amazing, Fernando. Thank you so much. Actually, it reminds me that even in my personal experience working for a bank, we created a long time ago, we created these artificial trade-offs between the financial returns, financial impact, and the social and environmental. And I think those are falling apart. We totally understand now that we can do the three things at the same time with the same excellence, with the same rigorosity. And that is the natural way to do it. Because as you said, we don't live in a vacuum. The environment and the society is around us and it needs to be taken care of. And that is the beauty of the impact investment opportunity to accelerate the achievement of the SDG goals. And actually, because we don't have enough more questions, I would love to ask each of you, if you can give me your final thoughts, maybe, or if somebody wants to ask, I can see Mohammed that is in the screen now, maybe he has a question, but if we don't have additional questions, I would love to go around the table to have your final thoughts regarding this amazing opportunity that we have in front of us, and what are other mechanisms that so we can improve collaboration and accelerate the process of achieving the SDG goals. So anyone who wants to get started, please jump in.
I guess I can jump in. I think that for me, and I love the conversation that we had and listening to Leonor and Juan Pablo and Fernando, listening to their examples. But for me, what's I guess I'd say even beautiful about impact investing is that it's really all about using the financial system as a motor for the impact and the change that we want to see in the world. And I think that, we talked before about aligning incentives and in the end, there's an artificial, and you mentioned it very well, I think he said it's artificial to think that these two things go separate. And the reason that it's been separate for so long is because the environmental and the social piece have been invisible. And we don't measure, we don't know, we don't even, we've called it externalities. We kind of keep it out of mind, out of sight for way too long. And it's very clear now, and there's a very, very clear wave taking us in the other direction. It's very clear that that's not sustainable. And before governments and others start imposing more and more regulations and requirements that force businesses and finance institutions to include these, the impact investing movement has come from the sector itself. It's us ourselves realizing that this is important, that they have to go together, and how the finance system can take a look not just at economic returns, but also social and environmental ones. So it's unavoidable. It's going to happen more and more. And I really I think it's so important that we're actually being a motor for that change that we want to see. So I would leave it at that.
Absolutely beautifully said. It can create a competitive advantage. In addition, Leonor, would you like to give us your final thoughts, please?
I was thinking about, like really, what are my final thoughts? Because I agree as well that the discussion has been very interesting. And what I think is that, impact investment for me is the result of having a group of individuals that believe that the world can really be a better place. And it is about being courageous, being daring, being bold, and also having the strength of putting a vision out there in the world and finding the right partners to make it happen. But it goes deep. It is about creating a new social pact, bringing populations, businesses, and people that have been excluded for decades, and actually understanding that is with their knowledge and through their internal capacity that we can all together actually move forward as humanity. So for me, it is a very big deal, because at the end of the day, if you don't take into consideration in this time and day the social and environmental aspects of any kind of investment, I think that we're really doing a disfavor to the next generations and even to us and to our own future. So I guess my final thoughts is join the path. It's fun. There is a lot of people that really take it seriously and that really want to see the change happen. So for all those people that have that kind of call in their hearts and that truly believe that we can change things by just changing the behavior and changing the systems that we created ourselves as human, then this is for you and you should join. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And maybe there is a little less attention into the financial component, but we can add so much into the social and environmental one.
Yeah. And when it's done well, it's not neglected. That is something important as well. When it's done well, the financial aspect flourishes as well. It's not either or. It can be both, but it just takes more time and it takes skills that may be normal or usual investments, or not normal, but like investing as usual don't have. But yeah, you don't need to sacrifice either.
Absolutely. I strongly believe it's an artificial trade-off that was created. It's easier to do it with one lens, but if you put into your 3D glasses, you can have them all. Fernando, any thoughts? Final thoughts?
Certainly, like all these themes nowadays, natural capital, gender lens investing, etc. There will be a time, hopefully not in the not very distant future, when there's just going to be a way of doing business which takes into consideration all this. So from that point of view, I just want to perhaps reflect or invite everyone to take SDG 17 seriously, the power of the partnerships, because I think that there's a lot of information out there. Please, develop your networks, leverage on them. Like, for example, ourselves, we have developed, we are investors, but we have developed tools and training courses, both in Spanish and English for our clients, because these topics are generally, new, and we don't necessarily expect that everyone is going to be at the same level or speak the same, language, etc. So my perhaps final reflection is, if you are really interested in walking the talk, then please, what I encourage you to do is to develop your networks and try to access as much information as possible to get well informed.
Thank you so much, Fernando. Juan Pablo, final thoughts.
Well, for some years now, impact investment has become an excellent tool that large private sector have used to generate a positive environmental and social impact while obtaining important financial returns. So I just want to say this, according to the Global Impact Investment Network, if I'm not wrong, last year, the current size of the global impact investment market exceeds $1 trillion. This is just one reference to the enormous untapped potential of impact investment to improve people's life and benefits to the planet. So to accomplish or help the fulfillment of the SDGs through impact investment, in my case, is key to work together with other organizations on countries, and that's why the GSG plays a really important role worldwide, because with them we can contact and have a communication with other national advisory board in different parts, Africa, Asia, and America. So please let us know if you need help to contact or more information with some specific national country, and we can help you to start contact them.
Thank you so much, Juan Pablo. We're going to give the final 30 seconds to Mohammed. So please go ahead and welcome.
Oh, thank you very much, and sorry for being late. Anyway, I was getting ready, but anyway, the time where I am is a bit special, so I apologize. And my thought and my wish would have been, in a way, after this week, in a way, going through many discussions. My dream is to see how we can develop a culture of risk and opportunities management under a changing climate and environment. The question is, we take it in a way as we see that things have been changing and we are not very happy. We have no choice. Climate has changed or is changing and is going to change. Environment, the same situation. And also, I would say positively, the spirit of people, I think, is changing and have changed. So instead of blaming the past and dreaming about things without solution. Let's turn the page, as one of the president of the African country said. We turn the page without tearing it. And so we develop a new vision of risk and opportunities management, not only the negative part, but the positive part. And I got through Catalyst, in a way, this question of, though for more than 2 years, this question of social enterprise. But I add something, the social enterprise will be community-led. It will be a sort of bottom-up. Up to now, we were looking for something coming from the sky, like the rain. So if we could just speak about this social enterprise led by the communities and run by youth, including the people with handicap, which will be, so I have an example in Uganda. Believe me that it is just something very, very nice and very promising, where a group of youth, in a way, even part of them were from the handicapped, in a way, human being. And so they were doing something, a very nice bridge with the community of farmers, placing their product, using all their techniques and technology, placing their product at a good price in the market. And now, after those farmers, I think there was something like 15,000 in one place, after placing their product at the right price at the market, now they are up to looking more about risk management, and especially climate risk management. And from there, again, thanks to this contribution, they are now working how to be eligible to bank loans to improve their investment. And from there, any partner globally who want to contribute, and we are pushing through the insurance as a safety net, anyway, they will be welcome. So there is a new paradigm which helps through this social enterprise, bottom up or community led. I hope that it is a message of hope.
Absolutely.
It is being done in actually in a few countries, and the lead is Uganda.
Super. Thank you so much, Mohammed, for sharing that. We have to end it just with a quick comment. Thank you so much to our panelists for being part of this amazing conversation. We should continue with that. And just to make a quick announcement, we are in the middle of forming our Costa Rican Catalyst 2030 chapter. Anyone who wants to join us, and hopefully in the near future, Central America. Thank you to our panelists, Fernando, Leonor, Shannon, and Juan Pablo, who I respect and care a lot about. Thank you for being with us, and we should continue with this amazing discussion and exploring amazing opportunities. So thank you so much for being here. And thank you everyone for joining the discussion and the panel.
Thank you so much.
Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Or good